All right, welcome to the Band of Brothers podcast. I'm here with a good friend, an old friend, Chris Smith. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing good, H. It's really good to
Good,
see you. Good to be
good to
here.
see you, bud. Thanks for coming on, and thanks for you being willing to share your story with whoever's listening out there. So, let's get started by like the first time we met, maybe.
So, yeah, this is gonna be fun. Let's see, that's somewhere about 17 years ago. Here's what it was. So what
It
happened?
was probably '06.
Yeah, that would have been right. Oh six. You're
I've
correct.
got you on the roster for like, yeah, 1 week. So that's got to
No,
be what it
don't
was.
don't spoil it, man.
I
Don't
know.
ruin it. So so at that time, and we'll go back and tell you how we got there, but at that time in 2006, I have found my new savior. And her name is crack cocaine.
Hmm.
And I am off the wall. Kelly, my wife, had said she's had enough, and so I'm living in a really bad neighborhood in North Salt Lake next to two apostles. I got Robert D. Hales on the west side, or excuse me, on the east side, and David Bednar on the west side, and I'm living there. I'm just in mom and
No
dad.
shame there, huh?
Yeah, none at all. so so and some of my memory on how we got here is pretty foggy, but I know I was there when this happened, when the family kind of intervened and said we're going to get you some treatment. And I wasn't really happy, but whatever, if that's what you want to do. That would have been my I'd been to an outpatient treatment prior to that, a few years prior to that, and kind of completed it, but it didn't do anything because was checking boxes. So now my marriage is a shambles. Kids are mad at me. I'm living alone in the basement apartment of my mom and dad's house. They were out of the country on a mission next to these two yahoos in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, whom I love, but filled with shame, smoking crack cocaine off the charts. And I'm stealing from family to get it. Family figures out a little bit and says, we need you to go to treatment. And they made some calls and they found this treatment center up Parley's Canyon. And I remember riding with I think it was my brother. My dad might have been with me, and they take me up. It was a nice place. I love Parley's Canyon, up there to the summit. And I remember I didn't want to be there. And the first day was horrific. Yeah, you had this clinician. What's her name? Dad, come Chris Gross.
Yeah.
Didn't like her. She was direct, mean. You had dogs that had bad gas. We were sitting in a group, and you had a can of spray for smelling odor stuff. And then that first night, we ate food, and I thought it was too greasy. I mean, nothing was good. It's not about the place. It was,
Had a real Goldilocks moment there, right? This
yeah,
bed's too soft, this bed's too hard.
yeah, exactly what it was. And so I made it that first night, the next day, and then that next night, I people can't understand how funny this is. Remember, the formula for humor is crisis plus time, because most of what I'm going to tell you is funny now, but it wasn't funny at the time. So the second night, I go to bed, and my bedroom upstairs was right next to the phone that everybody would use to call their family, loved ones. And so I decided okay, I'll take this serious, and I'll talk to God in the form of a prayer. At that point, I'm spiritually bankrupt, anyways, by the way, but I thought I'll try. So I'm on my knees, faking out a prayer. And outside on the phone, I hear some client with his loved one, F you, F you. You don't know what the F you're talking about. And that was my sign. This is not God's treatment center. So the next morning, as you recall, I announce I'm not staying. And you get on the phone with my brother Scott, and there was a short dialogue, and I'm not staying, Scott. This place is not what we thought it was. This is terrible. And Scott drives up and picks me up, and we get in his car. We drive from the summit, top of Parley's Canyon, their summit, to North Salt Lake. That's a 35-40 minute drive, and not one word was spoken.
Hmm.
Not one word. and you could cut the shame with scissors, with a knife, with anything. It was just thick with total shame. I hated me. He hated me. I thought God hated me. It ultimately was I hated me. So let me back up and tell you how we got there. I am the fourth kid of 8, raised an active LDS family in Salt Lake City, Utah. Dad and mom always had pretty good, significant callings in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I was an active youth. Loved going. Okay, I liked going to church. It's just what we did, and didn't. Being the fourth kid of 8, you got to be a little bit assertive, I think, or you just get lost. And I wasn't very assertive, so I think at times I felt like I got lost a little bit, and would act out a little bit, just kind of to scream, "Do you see me? Do you see me? I'm here."
Yeah.
Didn't have any serious trauma growing up. Sibling rivalry was pretty big. Uh, we played a lot of sport. I'm a pretty good athlete. Ask Brian Heaton, I'd kick his butt in everything but softball. He can beat me in softball, but actually he can probably beat me about everything now.
Yeah.
And
He
then,
beats you in golf too.
yeah,
Well, maybe not. I don't know.
well, he's got a long ball, but he putts like a blind person.
He
Brian, if
does.
you're listening, you putt terrible, man. Um, Anyhow, so that I got my validation growing up a lot through sport, and was better than the average, and so I felt like, okay, I'm okay. I got sport. Go to high school.
So when did you first take any mind-altering substance? How old
Great
were you?
question. Probably around age 12 or 13.
Okay.
And it only happened one time then. I sampled a clear shot of liquor, which was probably vodka. It was a tiny shot. And I remember sampling that and going, this is terrible. And then within a year of that same time, I smoked a cigarette, which was the butt end. And I'm pretty sure looking back, it probably truly was the butt end, because since then I smoked. And anyway, that was it. That's it. So I go to high school. I better back up. There was one thing in my life that bugged me that I only figured out a few years ago it was normal, but I was asked to repeat kindergarten. And I remember,
Kindergarten's a tough grade, so not many people make it through.
yeah,
Just so you guys know, Chris and I love each other like brothers, and our love comes out as sarcasm more than it
yeah,
probably should. So
yeah,
I'm going to try and
yeah. Chris Groves
quell
hates
that.
it. Chris Groves hates it when we talk sarcasm. See, the tearing of flesh.
The tearing of flesh. Yes.
And I love Chris Groves.
You got that from me.
Really?
It's the Greek definition of sarcasm is tearing of flesh.
Sarcasm, the tearing of flesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I looked it up because I'm Greek.
I'm not. That's a cool story.
Yeah. Okay, so you get kicked out of kindergarten, you have to repeat it.
And I know that bothered me. Like, who does that? Right? Like, what, did I not share properly? Not take a nap? What was the problem? But anyway, fast forward, going into high school, no substance abuse, active in the church, but I was a young man who had libido, lots of libido. So I always had a girlfriend, and where I would begin violating my value systems really came in with my girlfriends. I would want to make out and push the envelope, um, and that was always a battle for me. I finished high school.
Can I back up? When you
Yeah,
took that drink, did you feel anything?
no. My
You don't
recollection is
remember?
the only recollection I have is that it was nasty.
Okay.
That was it. Um, no feeling whatsoever. Um, Finished high school, and then the right thing for an LDS guy in 1979 to do was to go on a mission. Um, I didn't oppose the idea, but I respected my mom and dad a lot, and if they thought it was a good idea, I was going. So I was called and served in the Johannesburg, South Africa mission in 1979.
No way.
Yeah,
Karen served there in 87.
no way.
Yeah.
I loved it. The,
In fact, we're going back there next year. She's never been back to Joburg, and then we had a friend of ours that was my first sponsor in 1997 from South Dakota moved I reconnected with him last year. He moved out here in January, and took the discussions and joined the church in February. And one of the missionaries that came over was from South Africa. So Kara invited him over and made milk tart,
Tart.
and some other thing and some other thing. And this kid was in hog heaven. I don't even know what we ate. But yeah, we're going back to her mission
It,
next year.
it was a
I didn't know
phenomenal.
you served there. So that was apartheid.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was, and I bring that up. That's fun that you mentioned that, because it was probably the worst mission for me to go to in the world for
So
the
do you
reason.
speak Afrikaans or was it English?
I learned Afrikaans, but I spoke mostly English. But
Okay.
everybody learned it. I spoke it in a couple of um, assignments, but most of my assignments were English speaking.
Okay.
But in during apartheid, I made a bed in 2 years. I made a bed one time. We had servants that would do that. I never cooked a meal, not one meal in 2 years. I never did a stitch of laundry, nor ironing, nor cleaning up of the apartment, at the flat or the apartment. We had servants to do that. That would come back to haunt me, because what I didn't learn on a mission was basic adulting skills.
Mm-hmm.
So I get home from the mission. I've been dating a girl before I left. I've been dating her, and we would write. And if Kelly's listening to this, I know she was writing and dating others, but I'm working through that resentment through the 42 years of marriage that we have shared. So I get home, and I'm still horny. And the remedy for a return missionary who's got that is we married. So 7 days after I'm home, I'm engaged to be married to Kelly. And 6 months later, we would marry. And that's when life started to unravel for me a little bit.
You're 21.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In my family growing up, we did not speak assertively. We spoke very passively or passive aggressive in the form of sarcasm.
Mm-hmm.
But we were not assertive. Was not appropriate to raise your voice in our house. Kelly, on the other hand, my wife, she was raised in a house where that was their normal form of communication. It's truly good, healthy, assertive communication.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine this. You know me pretty well, H, and I do stupid stuff. So Kelly and I marry. I do stupid stuff. She calls it out as she was brought up to call it out, which is assertive. And
Mm-hmm.
she uses, you guys use the word assertive. For me, it was basically just yelling. And, and so when that would happen, she would come at me and challenge me. And what were you thinking? And I wanted to panic. I couldn't breathe. If we're playing sport, basketball, I don't care how big you are. Let's go, Kelpo.
Mm-hmm.
You got nothing on me. I'll take you down. But this 5'4", 90-pound blonde comes at me verbally a little bit. I wanted to hide under the table. I just didn't know how to deal with that kind of conflict at all internally.
Right.
So marriage happened. 3 years into the marriage, I'm in a motorcycle accident, and I have a bunch of road rash and broken leg, and I'm taken by ambulance to St. Mark's Hospital and sent home the next day with a bottle of pain pills, tall bottle, and it said on the, it was Percodan, and it said on the label, take one or two pills as needed for pain. I can't recall the specifics, but somehow my mind figured out if I took one or two, the physical pain would go away.
Mm-hmm.
But if I took 3 or 4, not only did the physical pain go away, Kelly could come at me and challenge me all she wanted, and it didn't hurt me anymore. I didn't feel that pain. So I would heal from that motorcycle accident, but playing sport a lot, and particularly playing Latter-day Saint basketball, you can't do that and not find yourself in the emergency room.
Yeah.
These guys think that there's
So
NBA
back up and tell me when you first took some Percocets, like what was the feeling? What when it, because you took them orally, so it took a minute to get in your bloodstream, and it's not like taking a shot or a hit off a pipe or so. When did the like, do you remember that moment?
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I honestly don't. I don't. I've heard one guy Dr. Terry Sellers tell his
Mhm.
story years ago, and he described what you just asked as the feeling of, oh my goodness, if I could only feel like this forever,
Mhm.
everything would be okay. And that wasn't my experience with opiates. It would be later on
So
with
you use
cocaine.
them as prescribed and
I ne- I quickly abused them. I mean,
okay.
I quickly went, two's good, but four will make everything okay.
Yeah.
And so, but I healed from that quickly, and I'm not taking pills anymore. Like, okay, I'm healed, I'm good, it's good. Um, then I remember going to multiple ERs because of injuries from sport related. Didn't have the best ankles in the world, and would turn a lot of ankles. And Kelly, my wife, worked in the ER, Cottonwood ER. So I would typically go there. They would x-ray it and say it's either broke or it's not broke. And then they would say, back in the day, you know, what do you take for pain? And I was in there enough that I began to get a little nervous that I was being too forward, and I didn't want them not to give me any. So I would deliberately begin to mispronounce what I wanted. Like, what do you take for pain? Laura something.
Mhm.
You mean Lortab? There's no A in it. It's Lortab. That's it. That's it. Lortab. What dose? Well, I didn't want 5 milligrams. I didn't have the guts to ask for 10 because heaven forbid they, think I'm a drug seeker, which I was. So I would say, I think it's 75s. You mean 7.5? That's it. That's it. So what happened? Kelly and we've done the math, and somewhere from that first motorcycle episode, in the next 4 years, the window between me using shortened to where in that span towards that 4 years after that accident, I'm using 24/7 now because I don't like withdrawals. This is
Yeah.
before Subutex or Suboxone came out, and I absolutely hated withdrawals. So let me pause on that. About
So
within,
how are you getting continuing to get them after your ankle had healed or after your whatever?
okay, I might have passed over that because what I'm about to tell you is sacred, and people like Brian Heaton and Danny Newell and others will make light of what I'm about to tell you. Okay, in high school, I played basketball for the high school team. We were terrible at Cottonwood High School. And my junior year, the coach comes and says to me and four other guys, a new coach, because we were so bad they had to get a new coach. The new coach comes and says, you guys are going to make the basketball team, but you're not going to play. I owe it to you. You've been here for 2 years. You're not going to play. I'm going, I'm not running ladders, wind sprints, stairs. I'm not doing that to sit on the bench. I'm not going to do that. So we came up with this idea of, hey, why don't we try out for cheerleader? I'm just making sure you're not being disrespectful.
I'm laughing inside, but I'm,
So we ran for cheerleader, and all four of us made it. We weren't gymnasts. You didn't have to be. You just had to be able to just do something, anyways. And so we all four made it. And that senior year of high school was a blast. I had a girlfriend at every high school. It was fun. But at one point during that senior year, during some tumbling stuff, I injured my back. I remember it hurting, but I didn't do anything about it. So fast forward, you asked the question, how was I getting them? During that period of 4 years after the motorcycle accident, the back started to act up. And I remember going in to check it out, and they took X-rays and MRIs and go, oh, dude, you have a very, very bad back. Your L5S1 has
mm,
degenerative disc disease, spondylolisthesis, um, and some other stuff. And that's when they said, you need to manage this with pain meds. And
mm,
so at that point, I didn't ever have to run out because I could go to the pain clinic. And it was then that I was beginning, Oxycontin had just come out, and I'm getting prescribed copious amounts of Oxycontin, fentanyl suckers and fentanyl patches. It was absolutely, looking back, insane how how many opiates I was taking on a daily
mhm,
basis. But pause there for a minute. Around the motorcycle, just after the motorcycle, within a year of that, I'm training to be a specialist in the operating room, helping teach thoracic surgeons the proper way to do an anastomosis in implanting mechanical heart valves and cardiovascular grafts. One time, the training took me to Kansas City, Kansas.
So you were selling medical devices and then
Devices.
training on,
Yeah.
okay.
And so we're in Kansas City, Kansas. The first day there, we announced there's like a dozen of us from all over the country in this training. And we announced who we were and where we were from. And later on in that afternoon before dinner, they said, "Hey, you're from Utah. Are you Mormon?" And I remember saying, "Yeah, but I'm not a good one," which was a lie. H, this is one of the character weaknesses that I still work on to this day. If you can't like me, I can't like me. I need your validation for me to feel validated and to like me.
Mhm.
So my response of, "Yeah, but I'm not a good one," that was a lie, because I said it because I don't want them to, "Oh, you're Mormon. You're holier than thou. We don't want you around us." So I gave that stupid answer. And then they go to dinner that night. After dinner, they say, "Hey, we're going to go to the piano bar in the hotel." And I go, "I like piano." And that first night, they said, "Hey, why don't you try one of these drinks?" So I tried the drink. They bought me a drink. It was a Bartles and James wine cooler. Now
Mhm.
you gotta be old to kind of appreciate this, but I remember drinking that and went, "That tastes like Sprite.
Mhm.
This is this is nothing like that clear shot of liquor I had before. This is delicious." And
Mhm.
I kept drinking them. They kept buying them. My memory after that was waking up in the hallway of the hotel we were staying in the next morning, looking at a husband and a wife and a small child looking down at me like, "What are you doing?" That was my first experience drinking. I drank alcoholically the very first time, blackout drunk. So fast forward, we got alcohol now combined with pills because that's a good day. In 2001, I picked up a DUI, and this is crescendoing. And in 2001, family intervened with a friend of ours, H, trying to slow some stuff down. A guy named Harold Brown. Um, and Harold met with me a little bit and met with the family and said, "Really, what you got to do first, right around this DUI time, he's suggesting you guys got to take care of the cause of the pain before you can go to the behaviors." And anyway, get the DUI. That was a catalytic event for change that should have taken them, but it didn't. I remember calling Kelly from jail and saying, "Will you come pick me up? They'll release me." And it was late in the night or early in the morning. I said, "Whatever you do, don't bring the boys." Adam and Chad would have been 10 and 12 or somewhere around that age. And I said, "Please don't bring the boys." Of course, probably shouldn't have said that, because I vividly remember to this day, getting out of jail and, you got two sons going, "What the hell, Dad?" Anyway, fast forward that, it's just continuing on. That didn't stop me. And in 2004, we decided we should have back surgery. And I remember going into that surgery where they were going to fuse, cage, and screw the L5S1. And I remember going that night before the surgery. My fears were, one, I've had guys had similar surgeries and it got worse. Back in
Mhm.
that day, it got worse. That was a genuine fear. But my other fear was, what if it got better?
Mhm. Yeah.
Then what the hell do I do?
Yeah.
And so next morning I had surgery. I remember coming out of the anesthesia, coming to up in the unit up at Cottonwood Hospital, and the pain was different. Of course, it was hard to feel how much pain, because they gave me this little thing that all you had to do was click,
Nice.
and I'm clicking it like, "Nurse,
A
I don't think
little,
this
a
is
little
working."
morphine drip. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. "I don't think it's working." "Well, it's set for every like 5 minutes, not every 5 seconds, Mr. Smith. You sure?" But anyways, the pain that I was feeling, it didn't radiate down my left leg, my backside. It was just the pain of somebody had gone in there and beaten the crap out of my low back. So I knew something was different. And as the heavens would have it, it fixed it. To this day, I still play a lot of sport. I'm an excellent golfer. H. I
He
love
is, by the way, an excellent golfer.
who?
You.
Oh, there you go. Thank
Yeah.
you. So
We played a lot of scrambles together.
yeah, Yeah, we've done pretty good too in that.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you ever replace the golf club you snapped by undoing the strap on the golf cart?
I haven't, but actually, as we were playing all weekend with my son and two of his friends, I got one of his friends three different times where I loosened the strap on the golf bag, and then he wouldn't even hear him sometimes drop. He'd come to the next tee box and go for his driver, and he's like, where's my bag?" So one tournament, we weren't on the same team, I don't think, or I wouldn't have done it. And I loosened Chris's strap on his bag, and it fell off going up a hill, and it snapped a brand new driver.
Snap the driver. Yeah.
I haven't, and I probably never will. Just
Yeah.
to be really
Yeah.
frank
Yeah.
with you.
That's because you've made amends in other ways. We're good. We have always been good. Okay, so let's see. Where were we?
You're back.
The surgery worked. So now here I am. Still have this pain in here. Still have some messed up thinking in here, but now I've lost half my way to cope with it. So I replaced that with gambling. And I'm an excellent gambler sober. Go to the casinos give you all the liquor you can drink for free. And so I'm now getting drunk, losing copious amounts of money. I'm not working anymore.
Like Wendover?
Wendover, a lot of Wendover. That's a lot of Wendover trips.
Okay.
And I'm not working. So I'm stealing money from my family to fund it. And in 2006, yeah, I'm doing the math. 2006, I still around $2,000 out of my son Chad's account. He'd saved some money up to buy a car. He'd given me the account information so that I could go buy the car. Our agreement was you save whatever you can. Kelly and I will match it and we'll go get it. He had picked out a car and given me access to his funds. Instead of getting the car, I drive out to Wendover on a weekend.
Thinking, hey, I can double the money,
Yeah.
and then we'll buy the car.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the whole weekend I'm gone, didn't tell them where I was. And they had no way to contact me. But Chad could see his account. He couldn't do anything about it, but he could see it over the weekend drop $200-300 at a time until it's zeroed out. So that would have been on a Friday. I came home Sunday afternoon, evening, pull up into the garage, and there Kelly is standing at the top of the garage, and she's got her hands on her hips like women do, like, this is serious. You're in deep crap. And I remember I get out of the car and I walk past her and I said, "Hey, I don't want to fight. I don't want to." I mean, looking back for my addiction, the best defense was a good offense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to turn it around. So I walked. I don't want to fight. I'm just going to grab a few things and go to mom and dad's house and spend a few nights. And instead of saying, "Oops, sorry," or whatever, I just did that. And I remember catalytic event number 2. She says to me, "Take everything. I'm done. I don't need this crap anymore." And I remember thinking, that's fine. I was tired of you anyways. And I grabbed some stuff and I went over there to Salt Lake, North Salt Lake. And quickly there, I'm introduced to the one that would beat me up. I'm introduced quickly to crack cocaine. And that was when I experienced that, oh my goodness, if I could only feel like this forever, everything would be okay. But it's expensive. I'm not working. Mom and dad have a lot of nice stuff in the house. They tried treatment with you. Now we're to Ren'ais'sance Ranch. I spent 2.5 days there, and that didn't work. And so that's when, and I'm stealing from mom and dad's house. They had porcelain from Italy, Yadro, I think is what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Pawn shops loved it, and I'm in business. And that's when the heavens said, "Okay, I give you your chance, Christian, to exercise your own agency, buddy. And now I'm going to help you out here." Family found out about that. And the long story made short is they called the police, and I would spend 18 months in jail.
Wow.
For theft and forgery. And I'll tell you, in jail, I'll tell you, we're not running out of time, but I'll tell you how to catalytic event number 3 of 4 catalytic events. I needed 4. In jail, I'm spiritually bankrupt. I'm angry at God. I'm angry at family. I'm angry mostly at me, but even though I'm deflecting it to everybody else, I wouldn't be here for that. And I've been sentenced to 1 year in Davis County. And when I was sentenced there, I was in Salt Lake County dealing with some other legal matters. And so every day I'm in Salt Lake County Jail, ADC, is one day longer I have to spend in Davis County. That's why it was a year and a half on a year sentence. But while I'm in ADC, I meet up with a guy who became friends. His name's Jeff Carter. And Jeff and I, he's finishing a sentence. I'm just getting started. And we started talking, and he wanted to talk about God. And I remember, I don't want to talk about God. I want to play chess. Jeff, let's just play chess. So in the mornings, he and I would wake up, and after tray pass, when it was quiet, most inmates gone to bed, we would play chess. And he would try and talk about God, and I would push it away. One morning, a guy from Honduras interrupts our chess game and says in that accent from Honduras, what's all this stuff about Jesus you guys are talking about? And H, here's how spiritually bankrupt I was. I told him to walk away. Move on, I said. We're playing chess. Jeff Carter says, before you walk, let me give you this book and read it. If you have any questions, come back and holler at us. And I remember thinking, pretty wise move, Jeff. It was the Book of Mormon. Not a chance in heck we'll see that guy ever again. I was wrong. The next morning, he comes by and asks some questions. And I remember being very irritated. Like, are you kidding me right now? I'm a 47-year-old man or whatever it was. I just want to play chess and be left alone. I don't want to talk about God and all this stuff. Jeff Carter goes, hey, come back every morning. I remember going, what are you doing? And by the way, every day I'm waiting that I'm going to be rolled up and moved up to Davis County to start my full year sentence that I have to do. This goes on for 4 or 5 months. And each morning, and I found myself coming out of this bankruptcy, if you will, a little bit, because we would talk every morning. And I found myself remembering things I had learned many years prior to that in South Africa on a mission. And I know I'm not that smart. I know there's an author to that recollection. That's the Holy Ghost.
Right.
So this is going on. I'm coming out of the fog of spiritual connection and waiting any day. I'm going to be rolled up. And one night we're talking, what are we going to tell Jonathan? What are we going to teach Jonathan? And neither of us, we struggled to come up with something. And somehow we came up with the idea of the atonement. And I remember thinking, Yahtzee, I know everything there is to know about the atonement. I got this. So I went to my cell that night and prepared a pretty good dissertation on what the atonement was all about. And the next morning, which would change my life, began with telling Jonathan about, we believe there was a premortal existence, that we lived before we came here. We talked about the need for a savior. We talked about the birth of Christ, and we talked about his miracles and his apostleship, calling the disciples. And we talked about him being betrayed by a friend and the events in Gethsemane. We talked about him being condemned to die and actually dying on the cross. And I thought it was really good stuff. And I finish up, and I remember Jonathan put his hands across the table on top of mine and looked me in the eyes, and in that Honduran accent asked the question, why? Why did Jesus do that? And my first thought was, I've just been an hour plus telling you, are you slow? But then it was as if my grandfather was in the room, and he probably was, who had died many years prior, put his hand on my shoulder and said, hey, Chris, that question he asks you, you think you know the answer? You don't. And until you know the true answer of why Jesus did those things, life is going to be difficult for you. So I listened for a minute what was told to me in my heart and in my mind, and I answered the question to Jonathan. Jonathan, he did it because he loves me. And that all this stuff could go away if I would just look to him. That was the last time I ever saw Jonathan. That night, in the middle of the night, I heard those precious words, Smith, roll up. And I would never see Jonathan again the rest of my life. And I learned a valuable lesson. So I finished jail. Kelly comes to visit every once in a while, and then she came every day, every week. She never put money in my books. Still working through that one, Kelly. But And we started to reconnect again because I'm a good guy sober. I really am. And we started to reconnect. She brought the daughters. Sarah and Abby would come and they wouldn't miss a visit, and finished jail, finished my sentence. And I'm invited to go live with Kelly at home. And our agreement is, you can't use. That's fair. You got to get a job. That's fair. And so I quickly go home and haven't worked on any of this and this in my head and my heart.
So what are we now, like 08, 09?
Yet we're 09,
Okay, so you're what, 47, 48-ish?
48.
Okay.
And quickly, the expectation of being an adult overcame. I didn't know how to cope with it. And so
And you have a felony on your record now?
I have multiple.
Yeah, okay. So that's not always easy to find a job,
Yeah,
right?
I was blessed with that. So I relapsed real quick, and Kelly on cocaine, and Kelly held her boundary. You cannot stay here. And so I ended up being homeless in 2009. It was cold. It was October, November. Remember, it was Thanksgiving, and I'm homeless. And I remember calling Kelly. I didn't have anything except I did know a value. Anyways, I still was on Kelly's health insurance plan, and so I remember calling Kelly in an attempt to get out of the cold. I called Kelly and said, "Would you find me a treatment program that I could go to, residential treatment program?" Thinking that would be great. And her response was, "Are you out of your freaking mind? Good luck," and hung up. I'm going, well, that ain't very Christ-like, Kelly. Looking back, she was dead right. If I wanted this, I needed to do this. And so I started making calls. I'm certain I didn't call you because of my pride. I'm not calling H. So I ended up at a treatment center called the Ark of Little Cottonwood, where I met I met one of my human saviors.
Mhm.
And I've had a couple, including you. And there I was, there I learned the nature of God for me. Um, that God loves me because I'm one of his kids, not because of what I do or don't do. I'm just one of his kids. And so I began to heal there and learn thinking errors and belief systems I'd held on to. I was able to let go that weren't helping me. Um, and Kelly would come to treatment. We would work on some stuff. And three of the four kids came and we worked on some stuff in our relationships. And 83 days into it, they say, "Why don't you go home?" I said, "Okay." So Kelly said, "Come home." This time she had on a napkin 4 deal breakers. One, you cannot use, which is fair. Two, you have to get a job, which is fair. Three, you have to get your driver's license reinstated, which is also fair because I'm on probation, driving on a suspended driver's license. The fourth one, forgive me, anybody who's active LDS, I am too, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the fourth one always made me laugh when she brought it up. The fourth one was you have to go to church. And I remember thinking, well, hell, Kelly, if you'd only said that 30 years ago, none of this crap would ever happen. Man. That was sarcasm. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I get out of treatment, and 6 days into it, stress starts to creep up a little bit. And I decide I'm going to cope with this stress with a little bit of chewing tobacco, which I'd picked up in jail. Uh, Thank you, Mr. Coombs. Anyway, inside joke that a few of us get. And so I go down and buy a can of chew, and I dip a little bit, and then I am I make an attempt to go get my driver's license reinstated. We had done some research; it was going to cost around $40, and so Kelly had sent me with $40 down to the DMV in Taylorsville. I go to the clerk, take the paperwork, and prepare to pay the $40, and she goes, "Mr. Smith, I don't need any money." She says, "Everything looks fine here. I just need the court to sign off that you are actually in good standing with them, and then we're all good." And I smiled immediately. By the way, internally, my stress just went max out because the last time I went to a court, those sons of guns kept me for a year and a half. But I smiled, and walking out the DMV in Taylorsville, I had a BlackBerry or Blueberry phone. I forget what those are called, but it rings, and it's Kelly, and she says, "Everything okay?" I said, "Oh, it's fine." Keep in mind, I could have had a chance to go, I'm scared to death, Kelly. But my pride said, nah, I'm fine. I was fine, wasn't I? In the acronym, I was freaked out.
Mhm.
It's scared, neurotic, and emotional. I said, no, I'm fine. I just got to run to the courthouse and hung up the phone. And between the time I hung up the phone and get to the car in the parking lot, committee of monkeys in my head, they meet and they hold a meeting. And somebody says, yes, hey, the stress is pretty bad. You got $40 in your pocket. Why don't we go downtown, see if we can't calm down with a little crack cocaine? So I'm driving. Well, they vote. I'm sure it was unanimous. Find myself driving downtown next to Pioneer Park, looking for somebody to sell me some dope. And the phone rings again. This time it's my friend Jason Webb, my counselor. And I remember that I've got a guy, we've caught eyes. He's walking to the car and he's just about there. And the phone rings. Hello, Jason. And he says, hey, is everything okay? I said, yeah, sure, it is. Hold on just a second. Put him on hold for a second. Said, hey, and I bought $40 worth of crack right then while he's on the phone. And well, I just found out recently, I thought Kelly had called him after my call with Kelly. I just found out recently that never happened.
Yeah.
He was impressed.
Yeah.
Kelly was impressed. He was impressed. I wasn't in a good place. And my pride wouldn't allow me to go. I'm scared to death. I'm scared shitless right now. So I bought that pipe, crack, smoked that. And 10 days later, I sold the watch I had. I sold the phone I had. The car I was driving was my daughter Sarah's. I sold that, and that kept me in business for 10 days at a crack house out in North Salt Lake, West Side. And I remember that the dope's gone. There's no more money. There's no more way to get dope. It's over. And I used the landline I was crashing at to check my voicemail. It was full. And Jason had left a lot of messages. The first couple were, hey, I'm concerned about you. Please call me back. Crescendo in the middle of the week where it was about as aggressive as he can get. You know him a little bit, I think, Age. Christian, this is ridiculous. Call me. And the last message he left changed my life, and it was the final one. Here's the message he left. Christian, it's Jason. Have I told you I love you lately? No judgment, no shame, just unadulterated concern and love. And it gave me enough courage to pick up that phone and say, I'm not in a good place. And he said, I'll be right there to pick you up. I would go back to treatment for 30 more days. I'll never forget that day because something happened on that day, which was February 4th, 2010. That's when my mind was made aware that I can't smoke crack cocaine like a gentleman. I can't drink like a gentleman. I can't do opiates like a gentleman. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I made a decision that moment. I'm not doing this anymore. I got a difficult red personality wife, assertive. I've got to learn how to communicate with her properly. And I can't go self-medicate it anymore. It never worked. That was supposed to be a couple of hours and $40, and that was 10 days later. So I haven't picked up since then. Not
So
one.
February 4th, 2010.
2010.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. After that, I not sure what I'm gonna do for work. I started working for a friend, Carl Tobler, selling mattresses, and I knew that wasn't going to be it. I was just checking a box for Kelly. I get a call from a treatment center, Mike Jorgensen. Hey, why don't you meet me? Let's talk about why don't you come working for me? So we talked. He hired me. I remember that first year, H, I made I think it was $23,000 or $26,000. And I never worked so hard in my life for so little and been so happy. And I going, this is it. This is what I want to do. And I mean, we're not a rich family. I was making a lot of money in the medical device. There were months when I'd make $50,000 a month. And here I am working much harder. You know, you've been in this business. Filled in calls 24/7, includes holidays of every holiday. I'm pretty sure the holidays, what happens is late in the afternoon on Thanksgiving and Christmas, mom and dad are going, Johnny, that's the last time you're going to do this family crap,
Yeah.
man. We're calling
It's,
right now.
it's a holiday screw up during family time. You've ruined
So
one. This is the last Christmas you're ever going to.
exactly. That's exactly what happened. So
Yeah,
you and I,
December 26th was always a busy day.
yeah, yeah. And it became kind of an honor. I remember family took them a minute when I'd have to excuse myself to go down to uh, admit somebody in treatment on Thanksgiving evening. But now they get it. Now they get it. Let's talk about the family since then. Been working in the industry since, had a chance to work with UH, and I just loved it. It was kind of the foundation of my belief system in recovery is is right around what I learned from you and Chris and Steve and Shakes. Um, these are people that are important in my life. Um, so I've been working ever since in the industry. But let me back up a little bit. Family dynamics. So Kelly and I celebrate 43 years of marriage this February,
Wow.
which tells you how sick
He's a
Kelly
very patient person. Yeah.
but but we are so much better together than we are apart. We're not perfect. I've learned that in this whole process, this journey. I had this expectation that a healthy marriage would be one without disagreement. Well, that's horse crap.
Yeah.
I'd say bullshit, but I don't want to say that on this podcast. That'll offend people, so I won't say that. But
Yeah.
I've learned that that was never the case. You taught me. You and others like you helped me understand that truly the program I want in my life is not about perfection. It is truly about honest progress. Not this progress. Well, I think I did better than I used to do. No, genuine from the heart. I'm trying to get better, even though I screwed up. It's a program of progress. So I give myself more grace. Um, the kids they're all married.
Did Kelly go into like the family groups when you were in treatment?
Yeah, she did.
Okay.
She did, which is interesting for those that are listening that are spouses, that their loved one, that their spouse is struggling. This is important. I went to treatment. I learned a lot about me and my belief system and thinking errors. And Kelly went to a couple of things, but she didn't get what she really needed to put us on the same plane once I got out. And I think many times I've observed family members put their loved ones in treatment saying to you and I and others like us, fix him. And then they go away for 60 days or 90 days, what it was, come back and then they still look, well, it's not working. Well, that's because they didn't do their work. So when Kelly started to do her own work, another Chris Groves, I'm tapping a lot of my experience from you guys. You probably gave this to Chris, but I'm quoting Chris on it. The four C's of Al-Anon. I know there's only three, but Chris added a fourth, or I heard it from Chris. C number one, family members. Kelly, my wife, you did not cause my addiction. C number two, Kelly, you can't cure my addiction. C number three, Kelly, you can't even control my addiction, although you've tried. But C number four, Kelly, you did contribute to it. And when Kelly, at the first, Kelly was going, the heck I did. This is his crap, not mine. But when Kelly started to realize, you know what, I did contribute in ways she didn't intend. For example, honey, I'm in a bad way, and she knows I'm out there off the rockers. Honey, I need $50. What's it for? It's for gasoline. You sure it's for gasoline? Yeah, I'm sure. Okay. She gives me $50, and you and I both know, and everybody's listening to this, it's been their nose. I don't go get gas. I pick up the phone, I call my dealer and go, I'll be there in 5 minutes. You got stuff what I need. Kelly knew what was going on. Now, if things went bad and I relapsed and it went crazy, and I went to Kelly and said I need $40 or $50, she'd go, what's it for? Gas. Well, let's go down, fill the whole thing up. She's learning on her side. She learned how to not enable me anymore. And then we together, we went to marriage counseling, multiple, been fired by a couple, but we learned how to communicate with each other. Simple communication stuff, like she would poke me in a verbal way or mannerism way, and I, instead of lashing out, I now kind of, hey, Kelly, are you deliberately trying to hurt my feelings, or why are you poking at me now? What are you doing? And most of the time it's, I'm really not. You totally misread that. Oh, okay, we're good. So we communicate better. in this new world of recovery. The kids were all phenomenal. They have learned to forgive their dad. I've got one daughter, Sarah, who works in the business as a substance use disorder counselor, and she's good at it, H.
Awesome.
I hope she's not hearing this because I don't want to.
Where's she at?
Well, she's on a maternity leave now because she just had a baby, but she was working up at Wasatch. She's worked at
Nice.
Brighton, and I believe what's the other one? Turning Point. So she's had some
Awesome.
experience.
Awesome.
Since that time, I've had the opportunity to work with you, H, um, Steps Recovery, and Maple Mountain, and I also opened my own place, which was one of the greatest experiences of my life, the most difficult ever. I'm not a good business owner. Um, somebody would call and say, "Hey, I need help." I said, "Great, we can help you. How will you pay for it?" "I don't have any money."
Mhm.
"Okay, come on in anyways." That's not a
Yeah.
good business model. And frankly, I do believe in the law that you introduced me to of skin in the game. Of
Mhm.
there needs to be some. I mean, I'm okay with some scholarships, but there's got to be some vested interest in somebody's own recovery,
Mhm.
or it's likely not to
It
stay.
doesn't matter how much, it's what widows might, right?
Yeah.
It's something that's meaningful. And um,
Hold on.
what do you do on a daily basis? Like, what are your, that's big in the rooms. People say my dailies. I do my dailies. What are your dailies?
My dailies are to make a conscious effort to make sure my relationship with God is open. That when I make a mistake, which I do, they're not relapse mistakes of smoking cocaine. They're little white lies or lies of omission or manipulation. But I've learned shame, the toxicity of shame. So I really work hard that I don't have to live in that space. And when I make a mistake, I admit it. Now I'm really good at admitting most of my mistakes to regular people, but Kelly, it's just hard for me to say the words. I'm sorry. It's hard, but I'm working on it. So I
Yeah,
make a conscious effort to have an open relationship with God, knowing that He doesn't love me because of anything I do or don't do.
yeah.
I am
I think
accountable.
that's a misnomer. I think, um, especially religious people, and I grew up Catholic. I'm LDS, but there, at least that's how I learned it. Is there's this, and I think it's being a man too. We're more culturally geared toward performance. And when you meet a guy, what's the first thing that people say? Men say to each other, "What do you do for a living?"
Yeah, what do you
So I
do?
mean, there's always this measure kind of thing, and so there's always check marks, there's always slash marks, there's always, and I think understanding that we don't have to earn or be worthy of God's love. It's just there, and I think it's hard for finite mortals to understand infinite love because I love conditionally sometimes. I place nonverbal conditions on my love with my kids or with my wife or with my friends. And so to understand that just He loves us no matter what. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be worthy. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to, like, in fact, I felt God more in my bad times sometimes than I do in the good because of the contrast, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, I didn't mean to
Now,
interrupt you there.
let me tell you how I was taught that. Early on in recovery, I'm still wrestling with, can God love me? A liar, a cheat, a thief, can an addict? Can God really love me? And I'm at the Alano Club, finishing up a meeting, and a guy who knew me a little bit, knew my family, but we weren't tight, pulls me aside at the end of the meeting and says, "Hey, I know you're struggling with this God thing." He said, "I know you have some kids, 4 kids, right?" I said, "Yeah, I got 4 kids." He said, "Is there anything any of those kids could do that would stop you from loving them?" And I immediately, not knowing where he's going with this, I immediately responded, "Heck no." He knew my family well enough to know Sarah, the substance use disorder counselor, was a really difficult teenager. He said, "Well, what about Sarah?" And I remember I had to think for a second. And my response was, "Yeah, I guess I'm familiar with disappointment and frustration, but no, there's nothing not even Sarah could do to stop me from loving her," not knowing where he's going. And then he follows up with this, lit me up in my mind. couldn't God feel that way about God's kids? And he turned
Hmm.
around and walked away. And I remember immediately my head just, wait a minute. Holy cow, if that's true, and it felt like it was, it really did. Immediately felt like, oh my gosh, what if that's true?
Yeah.
If that's true, then my relation isn't based upon a level of performance. It's just
Mhm.
given to me. That means I could go to him when I really screw up and he could actually go, I got you, man. I love you.
Mhm.
Let's figure this out. You don't have to run from me. You don't have to isolate from me. We're good, buddy. We're
Yeah.
good. That changed everything.
Yeah. My daughter's on an LDS mission up in Missoula, Montana, and she a couple of weeks ago said, um, Dad, I'm just trying to constantly run toward God because, excuse me, He's always running toward me. And then there was a talk by one of our church leaders that said he relentlessly pursues his children. And I thought, how many times did I run away from God? And I don't know that I necessarily even need to run toward him. I just need to stop and turn around and get a hug. Yeah, it'd be great to be running toward him. And that I think is the definition of, I don't know if repentance is the right word, but turning away from things that aren't what I want to be doing or who I want to be and turning toward the source and letting that light and that love. But sometimes the shame keeps us running away, or just stop, dude. Like, just stop. Like, you don't even have to run back toward him. Just stop and turn around and turn away from, whatever you don't want to be or what you don't want to do. And so I had a similar experience in an AA meeting, and he basically said, why don't you quit trying to earn your love for God to God and just start accepting His love for you? And I remember my first thought was, I'm not worthy of it, and the big lie, right? But I remember that was many years ago, and that's exactly what I needed to hear, just like you heard exactly what you needed to hear. So if you're out there and you're in a meeting and you feel a nudge to go give some guy a hug or go tell a guy, hey, God loves you, or like, I believe in angels, and I don't know how the celestial ones work mechanically. I'm sure they're there. I feel my family sometimes when I'm aware of it or be mindful of it. But all of my angels have been human beings, and I believe that they were, I use the word, prompted by their God to come into my life and to say something when they needed it. And they might not have wanted to come give me a hug or tell me what they told me, but they did. And so I think anytime I try, when I get those feelings, and God doesn't talk to me very loudly. I'll just put it that way. But when I feel that, I'm like, you don't have to make sense of it. Just go do it. In fact, that same guy who was my second sponsor said, if you ever get the urge to do something good, just do it. Like, don't debate it. Don't think, well, what, and this and that, and then just go do it. And so your dailies are that constant contact.
Constant contact, accountability, um, integrity. I'm honest. I am just going to be honest. And then I include service. And it doesn't mean have to go down to the homeless shelter, but I love doing that. But it means saying something nice to a grandson or a granddaughter, or being kind to my wife. Many times it's the I'm going down to pick up somebody who's homeless downtown or whatever, but it doesn't have to be that for me. I want to incorporate those four things. If I can do those four things, all I can tell you is that I haven't picked up in going on 15 years.
Yeah,
It works for me.
yeah.
I
And I
also,
think whatever people's pattern is, I do third step prayer and some other things, and from my Catholic days, the prayer of Saint Francis, that's always been a big part of that's my morning stuff. So for those of you listening, just find something that works for you.
yeah,
It doesn't have to be a formal thee and thou prayer. It doesn't, like, it just whatever works for you, where you can center up with God, get rid of your general stars and put on your corporal's patch, and just start your day in that level of humility and that level of, and it makes life easier when you don't have to be the star, when you don't have to direct everything, when you don't have to figure everything out, when you don't have to. I mean, I remember, people relapse and like, man, I stopped working my program, and I'm like, no, actually, dude, you started working your program, and your program sucks.
Yeah.
That's what the problem was. Like,
Yeah.
your program sucks. So start working the program of recovery. And I don't mean Renaissance Ranch. I mean the steps. I mean whatever A you go to, and whatever works for you in your recovery. It's and whoever your God is. I mean, I hate to break it to everybody, but it's a spiritual malady, and it's a spiritual solution. And that doesn't mean religious. That means a reliance upon something greater than you to help you make it through life and find some happiness and joy in your life. And you can learn all the stuff in treatment, and I love all the stuff, and I'm certified in CBT and DBT, and I'm a licensed interventionist, and there's a lot of other acronyms I could give you, and those things are critical if you're learning them in treatment. But the rubber meets the road is when you're out of treatment, you're out of that protective shell, and you're in a sober living home, and the woman you weren't supposed to be dating the first year in your recovery, by the way, breaks up with you, and your boss yells at you, and you've tried calling a sponsor, no one's answering. You tried calling four other dudes, and nobody's answering, and you want to use, and it's just you and your maker, and that's where recovery happens, in my opinion. And if that connection isn't there, if that reliance isn't there, sometimes dudes relapse because we lack the power to maintain long-term happiness. I just believe that as mortals. And so, what
Yeah.
would
Hold
you
on.
say? No, go ahead.
Talk for a second. Remember what you're going to ask me. That concept you brought up of religion and spirituality are not the same. That was a big deal in my world because for so long I had confused them to be the same. I thought they were the same. And so when I didn't feel something going to church, which why would you when you're violating almost every value you hold dear? What I've learned in the recovery process is what you said. For me, those are two different things.
Mhm.
I I go to church routinely. In fact, these yahoos are silly enough to call me to a position of leadership in the young single adult as a counselor, which is flipping amazing because I get to be
Yeah.
authentic and me. But I don't find my spirituality going to that building. I find my spirituality in quiet places, early
Mhm.
morning hours, oftentimes, mountains, fishing,
Mhm.
pretending to hunt. I find them looking in the eyes of a grandchild of mine, which we have 11, where they just look at me and go, I love you, Gramps. Not
Mhm.
because of anything I do or didn't. I just love you. I find three questions I often, when I get down on myself, I routinely ask the heavens three questions. God, do you know who I am?
Mhm.
Question number two, do you know the crap I'm going through and the pain that this is causing me right now? Do you know that? And question
Mhm.
number three, God, do I matter to you?
Mhm.
And so when I find those spiritual moments where those questions can be answered quietly, I know who you are, Christian.
Yeah.
I know the pain you're going through. And
Yeah.
yes, you do matter to me. It gives me enough hope to hold on and until I can have a little more strength and support through community and friends like you that I don't have to succumb to that side of me that wants to just run and
Yeah.
self-medicate it. Anyway,
And I'm,
that's
I'm biased, but I believe the 12 steps are written by God, and I consider the big book to be scripture for me. And sometimes when I have life problems, I go more to the big book than I do the big book, my scriptures. And even my little Izzy, who's in Missoula, Montana mission, this shows you how she was raised. For those of you who aren't LDS, when you go on a mission, you put a plaque with your picture and you put your favorite scripture, and they hang it up in the ward house in the church building. And she put the Serenity Prayer on her plaque. And then they said, well, great, but grab a scripture too. So she grabbed the scripture too, but that's how I've raised my kids in sobriety, and with the concepts that and again, all those things we learn in treatment, CBT, DBT, all the EMDR, all IBF, they're all critical and important, but the most long-term method intervention for long-term sobriety, the most evidence-based, are the 12 steps for long-term sobriety, and that's just a fact. And so if you're out there and you haven't gone through the steps yet, grab a sponsor. It doesn't have to be a perfect person. In fact, it's not going to be. And you might not see him again in 6 months. But I promise everybody listening that if you work through the steps the first time and you live within the steps in your life, it'll change your life.
Yep.
It'll be transformative. And that's how much I believe in that. And so I hope everybody hears that anyway, yeah. And I think, what would you say to somebody listening out there like that? I don't know, there's people maybe listening that are having a hard time that don't, oh yeah, well, he's got 14 years. Yeah, big, like, of course his life is good. And I'm 3 months sober and I'm still on probation and my wife doesn't like me. And like, what would you tell somebody that's maybe not in a great place in early recovery or in late recovery?
I'm thinking. I I think it's hold on. I think it's hold on. Be impeccably honest with yourself. More important to me, be honest with yourself. Where really are you at? I'm thinking here for a little bit more. Reach out. We all know it. You've heard it. You probably started at 8 years ago. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. So those that are hurting, sometimes, it feels like loneliness. Find connection, meaningful connection.
Mm-hmm.
Go
And
back.
if you're a man in early recovery, find connection with another man. And if you're a woman,
Yeah.
find connection, because we know how to connect with the opposite, and that turns into, yeah.
I mean, for me, sometimes crack cocaine came in the form of the opposite sex.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not, I wasn't faithful to my wife. Not proud of that at all. But that's how sometimes I felt validated, and that all of that was part of the sickness and the disease.
Yeah.
Gosh, there was something else I wanted to tell you about that. I'm gonna have to think on that more. I'll have to put it in,
Okay.
send it in to you. I just think, hold on. Okay. I love many things about AA. 90%. I just maybe have one hang up that you and I talk. But one of the many things that got right was rarely, and I would say that to the one struggling, rarely have we seen a person fail and read that quote. You know it by heart. What is it? Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got it right here. Where am I at?
While you're looking at that, I believe this to be, I believe that the 12 steps are ordained of God. I too believe they're scripture. Yeah. And this one, the other one I love is acceptance has become the solution to all my problems. But this one rarely. And I remember reading something that early on in the history of AA, Bill W., he was asked the question, would you change anything? And this could be hyperbole or whatever, but I like it. It feels right to me. Would you change anything, Bill W., as you look back in your life and the AA stuff? He said, yeah, I'd change the word rarely from never. Or I would change the word rarely to never have. Yeah. Go ahead, read it.
Yeah. And if you look at the forward to the first edition, and sometimes AA isn't right for people, or NA or whatever. I'm talking more about, there's really two programs. There's the fellowship of AA or NA or CA or CMA or whatever, and then there's the book and the doctrine of that. And so the first two lines that were written in the big book, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. I don't know how much more direct you need to be. And I don't want to get into the word recovered. We don't have enough time. We'll do that on another podcast.
Yeah, I'll hold you to that. I want to talk about that concept another time.
Okay.
Okay.
We will. We will.
Hey, last
Buddy,
thing.
thank you for coming on. Go ahead.
Last thing, and then you'd do that.
No.
I wouldn't wish what I went through on anybody. Not anybody. Wouldn't wish it on anybody. It was horrific. But everybody that hears my voice, you hear this. If you hear nothing, I wouldn't trade it for the world. Nor would my wife, Kelly, nor would any one of my 4 children or their spouses or our 11 grandchildren, because we are better, because we have found this tenet of honesty, of connection, of spiritual connection, understanding who God is in our lives and his role and his wife's role. And I'm telling you, we are kinder people. We are less judgmental. We are more patient. And so just know that as if it's hard right now, if you're going through a tough spell, as we do, just hold on.
Yeah.
Because I am a better man because I went through that crap.
Amen. Hold on to God.
Yeah.
You don't have to hold on to anything. You can go hold on to some other human being, and at some point it's not going to be enough. And so whoever your creator is, Buddha, Allah, whatever, energy, the mount, like whatever, it's just got to be more intelligent than you, which is a low bar for some of us. Well, anyway, buddy, thank you for coming on and being willing to share your story. I don't know how else to put it. I freaking love Chris Smith. And there are just certain people you meet in life that are just brothers, and they're familiar, and you love them, and they piss you off, and it doesn't matter, and this guy helps more people than a lot of people I know, and you've been a catalyst of recovery from the minute you started getting sober. And so thanks for coming on, and thanks for all you do helping those who suffer, and for all the work you do with the people out there, many of whom you won't even know that you affected. The ripple effect of what you've done over the years, luckily you won't know in this life. But thanks for coming on, buddy. I love you and I appreciate you. And thanks for sharing your story.
You're welcome. I love you, H.